There was a guy, Bob Graham, who in the 1940s was an amazing fell runner in the Lake District. And he lived there, he ran a hotel, and he developed, he was an extraordinary athlete, he developed this round. And the round meant that you start at Moot Hall, on the door of Moot Hall, and he ran around different mountains, different peaks, different fells around the Lake District. And he created this extraordinary course which he managed to do in 24 hours. And then 16 years ago, somebody thought, why not mix it up a little bit and change it, make the round a bit shorter in distance, but add in 4 lakes. And so this got called the Frog Graham Round, which is a pun on the Bob Graham Round.
Frog Graham Round, I was not aware of how challenging this was going to be for them and for us as a crew.
I came across this about 7 years ago, and I added it to my bucket list of things that I wanted to complete during my lifetime. I couldn't find anybody mad enough to do this round with until I met Ivan.
I had this innate drive to push myself and do hard things since very young age. When I was 12, my granddad got me to a local pool and taught me to swim. And then I was quite consistent for several years. I started to do strength training, also going to the gym. And I did some martial art courses for a few years. And I was very, very consistent until 25. For me, and probably for James and Nick, we are now 48, 50 years old, and we have families, 9-to-5 jobs. I work in central London, which is quite far from where I live. I cycle to work, which is 25 kilometers one way, so this gives me pretty good time to build endurance. I'm sitting all day long in front of a screen, 5 days a week, and having the opportunity to go and outdoors and to run in the hills or just cycle after work, counter all this negative energy that I accumulate during my work days.
And we had a go at it last August, and so we had a go at that, and we got about 3/4 of the way round, and then we got smashed by a storm on the top of some mountains, and got down to the lake, and it was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and we were just wrecked, and we went, okay, enough. And I thought I'd say kind of why do something like this? I found the long distance of going out on a run was really good for me, going out for maybe 2.5, 3 hours. And I found that it was good just to kind of leave behind all of my problems and issues and work and to go off on a long run.
At our first attempt with James, we descended this mountain, these hills there. So we descended to the shore over there, and we swam across the lake. There is this little island in the bottom there. And then we walked across the shore, and we had to climb this mountain there, which was quite challenging because there is no path, and we had to go through the bushes, through the fern.
Found that the kind of pushing through it, I kind of found a deeper part of me, the character, and it developed my character, and it changed. And I found it very good for my mental health as well. 8-9 years ago, my nephew, David, my beloved favourite nephew, took his life. I really feel like I've come through, never healed, but I'm in a much better place. But as part of that, I'm aware that going off to the mountains is really, really good for me to find peace. It's also been great with my son. He's 24, JJ, and he said to me when he was 12, I think, "Hey Dad, you're going off to the mountains, and I'd love to come with you some point." So we did that. So it's been really good for our relationship, and it's something that we bind over.
At the age of 25, my dad died very unexpectedly in a car accident, and it turned upside down completely my life. I stopped training. I was depressed for a very long time, and it wasn't until I got 40, maybe 45 years, when I read a book for an ultra runner, and it provoked me to go out and run.
I find them deeply spiritual events as well, that you go to these, you leave behind London.
I just felt in love in doing this, and this is how I ended up just making it part of my life.
The temperatures up north were very sporadic. We had moments where, I think the first day when we got there, it was like a pretty good temperature. It was a little chilly, some wind, but it was beautiful. The sky was pretty clear, just a few clouds here and there. I think it was Mother Nature tricking us into thinking that conditions were going to be perfect.
There are almost 35 hours until we start, and everyone is quite nervous, just quite a lot of pressure. I mean, it's not smooth. I mean, for example, I feel a bit sick now. It was a very, very cold night yesterday. I really hope that on Monday morning I'll feel well and not with fever and sore throat.
After those days of initial planning came the challenge, and boy oh boy, it was a challenge. They began, of course, touching the door at the church, at the chapel, and I ran with the guys over to the first lake while Blaga and Dimi hopped in the car to go meet us there and set up like the sort of shots that they would be doing. Dimi was setting up his drone, and Blaga was getting ready in her wetsuit and her GoPro ready so that she could swim across the first lake with the gentleman to the first island. After we all hopped in the car and began our drive over to the adjusted second point, we drove our way down to this little valley here, and I took all my equipment out, got a bag together, and I was then supposed to make my way up to Dalehead, which was a nice, beautiful little view over this deep valley, and I was supposed to meet the guys there. It took me about an hour to get there, and I was supposed to be arriving around the same time they were. They ended up arriving about 2 hours late, which was fine. But after this trek up this mountain, which wasn't too bad, it definitely was a bit of a challenge for me, but nothing out of the ordinary, nothing extraordinary. After a sort of delay from them, I guess they weren't really expecting the hike to be as arduous as it was. Met up with them, and we began to make our way over to the second point, which is Robinson Peak, which is another mountain just a few kilometers away. Little did I know, and did any of us in the crew really know, that I was supposed to then run with them. I wasn't really prepared for a run. It was fine. I consider myself to be in relative shape, but I did have a lot of equipment and layers on me that it wasn't really ideal to wear when you're going for a run through mountaintops. I ended up having to just stay behind and keep at my own pace for my own sanity and safety, because I was not really confident in my ability to sort of keep up at the pace that they were going with my footing and everything that was happening. So, long story short, sun was out, I was drenched in sweat, exhausted, fear was kind of starting to bubble up a little bit, and I knew I had to make my way down to the next checkpoint, either because if I don't, I A, get lost, or B, would just miss out completely on supporting the sort of crew to get the next things that we need to get done and filmed. Made our way down, and I guess going along the way, I kind of rolled my ankle. I was just kind of a mess. I had dirt all over me. It wasn't pretty.
So we're here on the edge of Buttermere. It's pretty, and that's last year, that's where we got to. I mean, we've ended up down here at like 2 a.m. in the dark, and pretty smashed. So it's a lot nicer than it was, no driving range.
I didn't dare to swim then. We just, that's why we canceled it.
Well, we're feeling pretty good today, and we're a bit behind schedule.
Yeah, we don't have time to change wetsuits now. We are concerned that we'll miss the third lake. We need to get to the third lake before it gets dark. So that's what we are rushing for.
But this is the first time we've swum without wetsuits as well.
Coming from someone who considers themselves to be in relatively good shape, I truly did not understand, and I think the crew also just in general truly did not understand the sort of challenge that they actually put themselves into, and this was really just the beginning of a very long journey for them. So with that information, we sort of tried to gather ourselves and gather our ideas and what this film is actually going to cost physically and mentally to these guys and to us as a crew. So after a series of me vomiting in toilets and in bushes, we finally were able to get some food and sort of decompress and figure out and plan what we'd be doing next, which was to meet them at Crummock Lake. And that truly did not go according to plan, because the span of a mountain that they had to cross, I guess, really took them a lot longer than they expected, and they were a few hours behind. So by the time they approached the shore, sun was definitely falling very quickly. And even in the UK, which is something I learned, the sun sets very late in the evening in the summer. But even with that delay, they still were about to have to cross a lake at night with a very strong current, which is not ideal and very dangerous. So we did our best to definitely try to make it as safe as possible. We tried to guide them across with lights and help them do this extreme event in as safe a way as possible. Because of the conditions that these guys were about to have to swim across this lake, we began to understand that we have to take sort of precautions for their safety, because this was a very dangerous thing that they were about to do, and none of us truly understood how dangerous it could be. So initially we had brought this inflatable kayak for just filming purposes, so we can get angles of them along the water as they swim throughout different lakes throughout the entire journey. But little did we know we'd end up having to use it as a sort of safety measure. And so what we did was I waded across Crummock Lake in my still not so great condition.
We wanted to not swim a lake in the darkness. Yeah. But
it was just chaos. There was just the runners yelling at each other, trying to figure out where each of them were, trying to make sure that each person was safe. Some of them were going through sort of physical pains, like cramping in the lake, which is very not ideal, especially for that time. There was a current pushing them in the wrong direction. So it was just a lot of chaos. But after a series of very stressful moments, they made their way across the lake, and boy, these guys were in just very awful shape. They were shaking, they were freezing, the water was sticking on them, they could barely get words out. And as someone who was witnessing this, I truly felt really bad for them. I could not wrap my head around how they were feeling at the moment.
Everything else kind of fades away, work pressures, even family and money, all that fades away, and it's just going out there with great friends who you have to trust, and you get to know each other better than you can get to know people in any other way.
The one thing that I noticed the most was Yvonne was just truly shouting for James and Nick, and especially James, to make sure that they were both okay, and to make sure that they were both able to do this, because it was beginning to become very worrying, especially from his perspective, because he was in the water with them, and no matter, even if he was shaking, if he was stuttering, if he was just almost near hypothermic, he was constantly shouting at them to make sure that he has an awareness of where they are, how they're doing, and if they're okay. That was truly the most important thing to him, is to make sure that if they were both okay.
Maybe the spiritual part of this is that you lose yourself and start thinking more for the others. So guys, we just completed the third swim, which was quite brutal.
That's one of the toughest things I've ever done in my life. And the cold just is so disorientating because you couldn't really tell where you were. You couldn't see the other swimmers. There was a light on the canoe, and a light on the bank, and there was a light in the car, but you didn't really know where you were going at any point. And the cold just started seeping in and in and in, and I knew I was getting into trouble. I really did, and I'm really grateful for Ivan and for sticking with me, and for Nick coming over and saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" Because I wasn't. I just wasn't. I was falling apart. But there's a huge sense of victory as well in pushing through and going right to your limits and doing something you've never ever done before.
At that point, we weren't even halfway.
We, as a crew, began to realize that they might not finish this challenge.
And I think there's some people think, that's crazy. Why would you do that? Why would you do such a thing?
As a licensed mental health counselor, one of the first topics I discuss with my clients is their level of physical activity. Research has shown that physical activity, including sports, alleviates symptoms of depression and anxiety. A study published in the Lancet Psychiatry revealed that individuals who actively participate in physical activity experience 43% fewer days of poor mental health. Exercising stimulates the production of neurotransmitters such as serotonin, dopamine, and endorphins, which all play a role in mood regulation and a sense of well-being. Participating in these intense challenges, maybe a marathon, cycling, or triathlon, it helps people in their everyday life because it gives them an elevated self-esteem. If we have an elevated self-esteem, we're more likely to pursue what it is that we want out of life. When somebody pushes their mental and personal limits to the max, they're able to transfer these skills into their everyday lives. If somebody experiences a challenge in their life, they're going to have that resilience to get through it.
It took us much more time to complete the course that we initially estimated. And I think the most critical moment was when we arrived after 25 hours in this visitor center. And at that point we were absolutely broke. I mean, we were wet, miserable, cold, because the second day was quite bad, especially high in the mountain. And at that point I was thinking, that's it. I mean, we are done. We cannot go further. We were me and James, and I asked him how he feels and if he wants to continue. And I was very concerned because I saw that he's very tired, and also I didn't want that he does it just for me. And then at that point he turned to me and he said something. He said, I want to do it because I don't like not to finish things.
We're on the last page of the map, so we're just here, and we have to come up. We've got 3 fairly small peaks to go, and then come down to the lake, and then we swim over Bassenthwaite, which is quite a long way, about 800 meters, and then the biggest mountain of them all, and it's a really nasty route up it. It's screech slope all the way up to the top of it, and then just a gentle way down to Keswick, and then we'll be done.
And at that point I just realized that we can do it, and I think this is the point where we won and where we completed this race. I just think it's so important to have people around you who inspire you and believe in you.
Yvonne and James decided to keep going, and Nick had to leave, unfortunately. So after several hours, we met them at the shore of Basin Waith Lake, and they, although had gone through all this, for some reason their spirits seemed to have been higher.
It's been an amazing trip. We've been going 27 hours now, so we're starting to feel tired and our bodies are starting to break down a little bit. And the last lake was hard, and so we have another lake now, which is slightly further. So it's a good challenge, and we're really looking forward to it. But we have one lake and one mountain left, and then we'll be done.
Yeah.
For some reason, they got in laughing and ready to make their way across the lake, even though this was the lake that they were the most fearful of because of the distance they had to cross. So once they were able to remove their wetsuits at the church, and they began to make their way into the valley that they had to cross before summiting the seemingly largest mountain that they had to hit, we were, as a crew, definitely concerned because of the conditions that were starting to amount and the weather that was starting to come across. But for some reason, they were still just spirits high, and I definitely think, in my perspective, that they knew in their heads that they were going to be able to finish this challenge and that they were basically at the finish line.
Earlier it said there are still a lot of red, obviously the wall of red to our left, and we've got the blue away to our right. A lot of white shirts inside this Munich stadium tonight, and a lot of course German fans would have been expecting to see their side in this semi-final.
So after several hours, we made our way across Skiddaw to meet them at the next point, so we can see what their condition was in, what condition they were in, and we were able to catch them coming down for a very far distance from the mountain with just stride, and they were still jogging a bit, which at this point I would have been dragging my feet, basically crawling on the floor if it was me, but these guys really did not give up, and we saw them and we offered them to take a moment to rest, and they really just did not want to. They wanted to keep going. They were both smiling for some reason, I have no idea why, and they just said, we'll meet you at the finish line, and they kept going, and they took off on the last trail, which was incredibly close to Keswick, and we just gathered our stuff and made our way to the finish line to meet them. And we truly, after discussing for a bit, understood like the sort of changes that these guys were going through, especially Yvonne, who seemingly was incredibly stressed and worried about this challenge, as one would be. And by the end, at each point, we saw just someone becoming better and better as a person, and someone becoming the best version of themselves, which was very fascinating to watch, because it's just inspiring, and it's very exciting as a person to see someone overcome challenges and hurdles. And I can honestly say I've never seen anything like it.
So we have got this mad feeling of euphoria for finishing something just so we've hoped for so long, which was so hard and ended in failure last year. And to finish it today with Ivan, and we miss our dear friend Nick, who had to stop, but it's such a great feeling. And to finish here, you know, this is the home of ultra running in England.
I'm absolutely over the moon that we managed to make it.
So
We got 2 beers.
yeah. Yeah. So that's a really good reason for doing either the frog going round or the bob going round, because you get a free beer at the end of it.
I just don't want to grow old, weak, and to live in fear and being sick. I mean, I feel pretty happy now that I discovered this completely new world. I mean, of going outdoors, running, swimming, cycling, and reconnecting with nature. I mean, the last 20 years before I got 45, I just didn't do it. I mean, I didn't feel well, I didn't know why, and I just now start to wake up and just to find joy doing these things, and to feel alive.
I did this like challenge, and I did it with my dad in Tune Park. He also went to the mountains and he went to a lake, and I'm very proud of him because he did really, really good. I want to do the same challenge with my dad. It's just so much fun. I really like training with him, and I've gotten really inspired of him, and I hope you can too.
This is such a beautiful experience, and the beauty of it is that you share it with more people. My hope is that we can inspire them to just to go out and do some adventures and just to have fun.
Ask me questions. When I exercise, I feel really free and I really, really like it. And I'm really proud of what I do. And before, when I didn't start gymnastics, I didn't even know how to do a cartwheel, but now I can do it straight legs, straight pointy toes, and I can do it great. It's like I'm a starfish while doing it.